FanDuel wide receiver analysis for Week 15. I'm Jason Gilbo, JGilbo11. With me is Justin Elick at BigItaly42. Taking a look at wideouts for this week, and I'm on a lot of these guys. Hard not to be. And this is kind of another week where I think most of us are going to be paying up at back, and that kind of limited us at the wide receiver. And we saw the chalk kind of value hit last week. Emmanuel Sanders, Taylor Gabriel. Do you feel like this week's going to be somewhat similar or a little less?
I think it will be. I mean, I think that McCoy and Bell are going to be, that duo itself is going to be super high owned, especially FanDuel. People are going to be pairing both those guys. And there are cheaper guys that you could play, but I mean, I think a lot of people are going to like to lock in that security. Like last week, I played Johnson and Bell together in my lineup, and then I know a lot of other people did as well. So I don't think that that's a bad way to go this week. I mean, because you've even got Zeke Elliott up there. People probably won't play him in cash games, but I think in tournaments he'll get some looks. I just think that the way to be contrarian is paying up at wide receiver or down at running back this week.
Yeah, I think so. I think in terms of lineup construction, that's how it's going to be. A guy who comes in at a decent price if you are paying up for that number one spot. I mean, Jordy Nelson, 7,700. He feels like last week's kind of T.Y. Hilton where, he's not quite elite price, but, you were able to kind of fit him in.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's the guy that is probably going to be the highest priced receiver I'm going to play in cash games this week for the most part. I mean, he's just incredibly consistent recently. You look at the things that he's done. He's putting up elite numbers as far as consistency goes. But like you said, he's still priced under 8K. I mean, his last 7 games, 94 and a touchdown, 94 and a touchdown, 126 and a touchdown. His low one there, 28 with a touchdown. Had 91-yard game, but still had 8 catches, 118 and a touchdown. Last week in Seattle, only 41 yards, but 2 touchdowns. I mean, now he's facing a Bears defense that is playing better, but, Green Bay is in desperation mode. They got to win every single game. And this could be another one of those spots where, you get people who go game log searching to see how, it's a division game. He had 1 catch for 9 yards against them the first time, but do yourself a favor and just completely ignore that. I mean, it's obviously an anomaly. You see his number throughout the entire rest of the season. I mean, he only has 2 other games other than that one without a touchdown. So it's not that this is a tough matchup. That was just one of those games that, didn't go the way they wanted it to go. And I think it's still a perfectly fine spot for Nelson. I mean, you're not going to get much more safety. I was looking at his red zone numbers this year, and he's got 7 more targets inside the red zone than any other player in the NFL. He actually has 17 receptions inside the 20, and Brandon Marshall's number 2 with 19 targets. So, I mean, he just gets a ton of looks down close, 14 inside the 10, which is easily number 1. I mean, he's just like the safest cash game play on the board. I mean, he, like we saw last week, only 6 catches for 41 yards, but 2 touchdowns. So, I mean, he's an easy play for me this week.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I think this Bears secondary, it's not bad, but it's not something you shy away from either. It's when a rolling Aaron Rodgers comes into town, I mean, there's no real threat against him. So
after what he did to the Seahawks last week, you don't worry about the Bears.
Yeah. So Demaryius Thomas, 6,700, cheap price. I mean, I know, looking through your articles here, we'll talk about basically there's a high volume here with Trevor Siemian in this passing game right now because, one, you expect him to probably be playing from behind, but also there's no real run threat there.
Yeah, and I mean, he's actually been playing well. I mean, obviously, like you said, it's kind of a volume thing right now, but, Thomas and Sanders were 1 and 3 in the NFL last week as far as targets. Obviously, it seems like it's just 1 week, but, I mean, this isn't really that much of an anomaly there. I mean, you got Sanders is number 6 in the league in 5 in targets for the season. Demaryius Thomas is number 10. So, this is something where these guys have kind of slowly built up from where they were at the beginning of the season, and they're getting more and more targets. Like you said, no running game to speak of. New England's actually decent against the run, too. They're not good against the pass. Bottom 5, according to Football Outsiders. So I think this is going to be another one of those situations like last week where, if you fade both these guys, you better hope that they're not high owned. And they won't be nearly as high owned as they were last week, of course. But, by volume alone, I mean, these guys both should each easily get double-digit targets. It's kind of hard to figure out where the touchdowns are going to come from, but, Thomas has the size. I'd say Sanders is a little more elusive, of course. But we had the same conversation last week. I said I like Thomas, you like Sanders. Sanders got the touchdown, but aside from that, they had essentially, the same numbers. But volume alone, I mean, I don't think it's that bad of an idea in a GPP, maybe in one, obviously, if you're playing a bunch of lineups, throw in Sanders and Thomas, you could easily, especially, with this volume, I mean, you could easily get 20 catches, 250 yards, and a couple scores.
I mean, last week I played some early only contests, and I tossed in a Broncos stack, and that ended up being my highest scoring lineup with Simeon, Thomas, and Sanders. I mean, obviously they were all very cheap, and you paired them with Bell and Johnson with ease. And I think you could kind of go a similar route this week in tournaments.
Yeah.
GPP wideouts here, Odell Beckham, home matchup here against the Lions, 8,600. Obviously, we talked about, if you're making moves in lineup construction, a GPP way to go is to kind of pay up a wideout.
Yeah, I mean, people are going to kind of go that mid-range and pay up a running back like we were talking about. So, Beckham, I think, is a guy that I like a lot this week, despite the fact the Lions are playing better. And Eli Manning looks horrible right now, just to be – I mean, being generous even with that, because even the touchdown they had last week, that was pretty much all Beckham. I mean, that wasn't a tremendous throw necessarily. That was Beckham just doing all the work after the catch, making it happen. So – Lions still a team that rank in the bottom third against the pass. They have been playing much better, but Beckham's a guy who, despite the struggles for Manning, just continues to produce. I mean, 6 catches on 11 targets, 10 on 16, and 4 on 9 last 3 weeks kind of tell a little bit of the story of Eli's struggles, which is also why he's a little more reserved for GPPs for me. But this game has huge playoff implications. This could potentially be 2 teams battling for a playoff bye. So, in a game where the Giants don't have a whole lot of playmakers outside of Beckham, you got to imagine they're going to be force feeding him the ball here, because the winner of this game is in a pretty prime spot in the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing to know, I mean, I think OBJ kind of ties in. Eli Manning plays a little bit better at home. Touchdowns are up compared to on the road. And I think that obviously, helps out OBJ too.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you look at his splits are one of the ones that not quite like Drew Brees-esque, but certainly one. He's averaging, or he's got twice as many touchdowns at home than on the road, almost 4 more yards per catch. Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty significant numbers.
Yeah, definitely. Julian Edelman here, 6,400. And this one, I mean, we're looking basically volume over matchup and the possibility of him either breaking one out or just having a monster 11-catch type game.
Yeah, and I mean, it certainly could happen for him. He's certainly not a guy I'd put in cash games, but, in this tough matchup, Chris Hogan's a guy I think people will probably take their shot on this week, or Malcolm Mitchell, because they're more of the big play threats. And while I understand that, I don't really like playing receivers on the outside against Denver. Obviously, they're number 1 ranked pass defense, and they have been for at least 2+ years at minimum right now. So, Edelman, like you said, volume alone. I mean, 17, 11, 12, and 15 targets last 4 weeks. There's no Rob Gronkowski. I don't think you can really rely on many plays down the field here. So, Edelman only has 2 touchdowns, so you're certainly not even playing him for touchdown upside. But, in a matchup that's really, really tough, if this game ends up staying close, which I do think that it will, because I think Denver will be able to throw the ball plenty. I mean, Edelman could easily see 15 targets in this game, and if he puts out a 12 for 100-yard performance there at sub 5% owned, you don't really need him to score a lot of touchdowns.
No, definitely not. I mean, and you look at that. I mean, obviously, on FanDuel, it's not the PPR site, but still, if he racks up double-digit points, I mean, it's still five points right there.
Yeah, exactly.
So, value wideouts, Taylor Gabriel, 5,800. Obviously, kind of the big home run threat there, who consistently is just finding the end zone at will, basically over the last 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah, he was the guy that was super popular last week, and he's been pretty popular over the past couple weeks, and didn't do much outside of that long touchdown, but didn't really matter. I mean, once he got that, then that paid off his salary easily. 6 targets again, equaled his high that he had the week before, his high for the season. But, I mean, the guy's got now 4 touchdowns in his last 4 games. Julio Jones looks like he's questionable at best to play in this one. Sanu will probably be back. I mean, it's just a tremendous matchup for everyone. And, if we're just talking the main slate here, Atlanta's team total is 6 points higher than any other team. So if I'm taking a value receiver, I'm going to take it from the team with a ridiculously high total of almost 33 points. And it's not that you're just trying to kind of take a shot in the dark. I mean, he's been a consistent option recently, and $1,300 above minimum for a guy who's scoring basically a touchdown a game over the past couple weeks. And, he's got at least 14 FanDuel points in 5 of his last 6. So this is definitely a pretty good spot for Gabriel for cheap. And, I don't even really think it hurts him if Julio Jones comes back, honestly.
No, I don't think so either, because I really anticipate, even if Jones is out there, which in this type of matchup, I don't know why he would be. The team can roll over San Francisco with the ease without him. And we looked last week, I mean, Tevin Coleman found the end zone. Hardy had a fluke kind of touchdown in there. But we saw basically there was well enough to go around for this offense, and Gabriel found his way.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of those guys that kind of snuck out of nowhere like a month or so ago, but I mean, he's been a pretty big part of this offense. So I like him because he's still cheap.
Yeah, definitely. Tyreek Hill, 6,400. Obviously, the upside on this guy has just been huge. Volume's also been there. Even with Matt coming back, I mean, the snaps were down a little bit, but the volume was still there.
Yeah, I mean, if it weren't for guys like Zeke Elliott and Dak Prescott, I mean, this guy would probably be, rookie of the year conversation. I mean, he's been really, really good. 2 times the last 3 games, he scored a non-offensive touchdown. I mean, looking at his points production, like you said, he's still getting a decent amount of volume as well. Tennessee, like we saw last week, gave up big games to both Thomas and Sanders. Last week, 6 targets for Hill, 6 the week before, 10 the week before that. I mean, he had the big game against Denver, good game against Oakland, had a big game against Carolina. I mean, this is a guy that he really is the number 1 option in that offense right now. I mean, Jamal Charles obviously pretty much out this entire season. Jeremy Maclin has been just an absolute bust. So, I mean, he's really asserted himself as their one, consistent playmaker outside of Travis Kelce. And, I mean, he can do it all. I mean, he could have a weak receiving game and then just end up with, a punt return touchdown, whatever it may be. I mean, the guy just can do everything. And I think he's definitely going to be a pretty popular play once again in a good matchup.
I mean, you can get a little wild and you can double dip here. Tyreek Hill, Kansas City Chiefs defense. I mean, I'm not against that.
Yeah, and I mean, even Kelce, I don't think is a bad option at all here. I mean, probably going to be higher on than you'd like in some GPPs, but as far as cash game play, I think he's a really good option still.
Yeah, definitely. These are certainly guys that I'm looking at this week. If you want to check out Justin's article, you can head on over to dailyfantasycafe.com. It's up on the site. Be sure to check out the rest of our Week 15 content.